Hey, you're hearing a lot about AI these days, but have you thought about how does that relate to social engineering? It turns out it's a big deal, and I've got an expert who's going to talk about it in just a moment. Stick around. Hello, and welcome to another episode of CISO Tradecraft, the podcast that provides you with the information, knowledge, and wisdom to be a more effective cybersecurity leader. I'm your host, G. Mark Hardy, and today I have Brian Long with Adaptive Security, and we're going to be talking about how AI is reshaping social engineering. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So, AI is everywhere. I was showing somebody last night who has been grumbling about his employer's requirement that he use AI, but he's never tried something. And I pulled up Claude Code and I vibe coded something within 5 minutes that would have taken him days to do. And he was just sort of, wow, this is really amazing. Well, we can, of course, use AI for good, but it could potentially be used, if you will, on the other side for evil. So, first of all, I'd love to ask you to introduce yourself a little bit so people understand who's on the show and a little bit about your background. And then let's dive into this whole subject.
Yeah, so I'm Brian Long, CEO and co-founder of Adaptive Security, and our company helps to protect businesses from AI-powered social engineering. And I'm lucky to be able to talk to over 1,000 CISOs every year. So I hear a lot about what people are experiencing in modern threat vectors and what they're doing about it. And as you mentioned, it's moving very quickly. It's changing very fast, and AI attacks are here and growing.
So 1,000 CISOs, I mean, that sounds like you're doing better than most salespeople in our industry. But as a CEO, it's important for you to understand the direction of where you want to go. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think nothing is more important than being able to talk to your customer and understand what their problems are and trying to build something that's hopefully trying to solve that problem.
So we often say in the consulting world, good, fast, cheap. Pick any two because it's a trade-off. But AI looks like it can be good and can be fast and can be cheap, particularly if you're a bad guy. And so how do we defend against AI-enabled social engineering? Is it about just being able to spot fakes more quickly and say, hey, just the lips are moving? Or is there a different strategy that you found is more effective?
Yeah, look, I think that across all of our cyber stack, along with controls at the company, modern organizations need to have a major evolution to solve against AI powered threats. So, you know, organizations are still just adjusting to a remote workforce. A lot of organizations still haven't fully adjusted to that. And now we have the premise that, Gartner estimates that 1 in 4 job applicants will be AI impersonation attacks by the year 2029. So, it's growing very, very fast across a lot of different vectors. And I think the first obvious thing companies need to do is make their workforce aware of this threat.
So things are actually changing. And so what you've indicated then is the progression where a combination of a remote workforce, improved deepfake tools, if you will, are creating this confluence of I don't know if it's an HR dilemma, but certainly from a security perspective, it's a concern if we bring people into the cybersecurity workforce who are either working for a nation state that's unfriendly or working for a competitor or just outright a malcontent. So, what are these attackers getting with this AI that they wouldn't have already?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, people are really losing control, right? You've got a remote workforce, which may even turn into an agent workforce. So we're seeing that you may be hiring people, you may be looking at people that are agents as well, and that's obviously also causing massive shifts in our approach to modern people management and security management. In terms of how to deal with it, I think step number one is education across the workforce, in order to just make sure your friend that's just kind of beginning to dabble their feet in AI and may not understand the power of these tools. I think sometimes working in the tech world, working in the cyber world, we're in a bit of a bubble, right? We kind of assume that everyone knows it because maybe our peers know about it, but when you talk to an everyday employee, They just have no idea what the possibilities are. So, number one is awareness. And then number two for me is controls. What sort of controls does your organization have in place? And it's not just controls around the basic things like wiring of money. It's new things like, how are you hiring people? What sort of background check do you actually do? How do you make sure that someone is who they actually say they are? And in terms of your question on what the impact can be, I mean, the impact can be if you hire someone and they get access to a whole bunch of systems and they're not who they say they are, then they can run a massive ransomware attack. They can steal information and put it out there. They can even just do things for malicious purposes that serve no financial intent. So it opens up a whole host of new problems.
It's a very good point because we always look at the insider threat versus the outsider threat, and we say, well, there's a whole lot more outsiders than insiders, but an insider can do a lot more damage because they're trusted. They can take a number of actions and well, that's what she's supposed to be doing. That's what he's supposed to be doing until such time as they really trigger an alarm, and by then it's often too late. So would you agree with the statement that AI is, if you will, democratizing the capabilities to run sophisticated attacks?
Well, it pains me to hear the word democracy used with a negative connotation attached to it, but I do think that it's making sophistication in cyber attacks accessible to everyone, right? I think if you went back just a couple of years, it was actually still pretty hard to make a good deepfake. It would take a significant amount of compute, someone who had, significant resources, maybe even a nation state. Now anyone from an 8-year-old to an 80-year-old can make it in less than a minute. So it's tremendously changed in just a couple years, and I think that example for deep fakes is emblematic of a broader issue that we see, which is that for all different types of attacks, really anyone can instrument them now.
So that, if you will, kind of validates the fact that our attack surface, although it may not have changed, it's become a lot more accessible to actors that might not have got there otherwise. The other thought is that on our side, as we work the defense, where is the biggest failure point that we're encountering? What is it making? What is happening, or what are the circumstances whereby these additional capabilities are actually empowering success and not just causing them to have a lot more false efforts?
Well, look, the people side of defenses are still the number one way that companies are being breached, right? Over 90% of successful attacks are still leveraging some sort of social engineering as part of the attack. So, people remain our greatest weak point in overall protecting your organization from cyber based attacks. We're also seeing this grow quite a bit, right? Deepfake powered cyber attacks grew 17x year over year to over 100,000 attacks that happened in 2024, and a meaningful, very, very large increase in 2025 in those attacks, costing over $1 billion in deepfake losses in 2025 alone, just in the United States. So that's growing at an exponential scale.
So, what does AI-powered social engineering look like now? What are we on the lookout for, or what
Yep.
would we say are the symptoms, if you will?
Well, I mean, step back for a second. When most people hear, social engineering today and they hear about, someone trying to impersonate someone to get into a company, they think, oh, they're going to ask for gift cards, right? It's going to be, hey, it's the CEO, give me the gift cards. And, look, I've had employees that have fallen for that scam. It's a good scam. So that's probably over a decade ago, another company, I saw that scam and someone fell for it. So that will happen, right? But I think what you're seeing now is something far more sophisticated. The attackers are now able to do a couple different things. One, they can make a deepfake persona that is not only the voice and likeness of the individual, but also gets all of the open source intelligence about the organization and the individual that it can use in the attack. And then number two, it can access large language models so that it can personalize the attack in real time and make it extremely realistic. So instead of me just asking for gift cards, I can run a really sophisticated attack where my goal is to gain access to your system, right? My goal is to gain access to proprietary information that I can use for all sorts of purposes.
Interesting. So, what they've got is an ability to grab your not just identity, but have the whole background of who you are and maybe your organization, which could be put in there dynamically. So this is not somebody, if you will, pre-recording something and then having a different face put on it. These are the attackers actually interacting real time with a shim, for the lack of a better term, of a deep fake AI powered intermediary. Is that a good way to
That's
put it?
exactly right. I mean, we run simulations now. We run simulated attacks where we can make a deep fake of anyone with just a couple seconds of audio. So it could just be the voicemail on your cell phone, or I'll call your phone up and get you to talk to me for a couple seconds, and I can make a real time deep fake of you and use that with a custom AI prompt to have a totally natural conversation with nothing pre-recorded, right? And instantaneous as well, and intelligent, accessing tremendous amounts of OSINT and um, prompting to respond to the right things in order to get what I want.
Now, because that's actually interacting with a human, there's not necessarily a way to trap it with AI. For example, large language models are very good at language. They're not very good at mathematics. And so if you're in a conversation, you suspect somebody is not real. They said, what's 7 times 8 minus 1? A little third grade problem, and then it just melts down. It goes, cannot compute. But if it's a human just going through and this masking is going it, then presumably then it's up to their own math skill. But we're really moving away from the old time where you get an SMS message and you go, oops, your bank account has been seized, or an email that says you've won $10 million in Nigeria, please come get it. It's really getting more sophisticated. So what is it that makes these AI empowered social engineering attacks work? Is it a believability? Is it just they just hammer, hammer, hammer till somebody gives in? What are the characteristics that create for success? Not that we're trying to give a playbook for the bad guys, but we're trying to help the defenders know what to look for.
Yeah, look, I mean, the biggest thing is just scale, right?
Mm.
So historically, you're an attacker. Most attackers are overseas, and they may not have the language skills. They also have a limited amount of people that they can do research on and attack. So, you might not only be able to attack a handful of people every day. Now, because you can set up an AI agent, and that agent can speak any language you want and can be researched in minutes, it's not really a question of headcount. It's not a question of people. You can have someone attack, thousands, tens of thousands of people in one day. And the attacker, it only needs to work once, right? You just need to get in once to get that payoff, to get that ROI. And the models are getting cheaper and cheaper, right? And the open source models, they lack moderation. They're not going to stop the bad guys from doing bad stuff. So I think the confluence of open source models that are making it really cheap, that don't have moderation, attached to the ability to do it at fantastic scale, is what it is enabling the modern attacker to do this with a lot more efficacy, and significantly more scale.
Yeah, I think one of the things. So I just found this yesterday. I had started a company many years ago called Card Kill. We preemptively kill stolen cards before they get used in fraud, and it was all about spotting a lot of these fraud patterns and things such as that. But one of the things we find out on people who get scammed, and I'm just using that as one subset of the social engineering, is the attacker will tend to put pressure on them, time pressure, get them, you need to do this right away. You have to go make something happen. Something bad is going to occur. Are there other characteristics of these things as we're trying to educate our users of what to spot, that they could say, hey, this doesn't pass muster. These are not the sort of things that you would be asked to do either by the CEO. Hey, go scrape off some Blue Dot gift cards at the drugstore and send me the codes.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, look, this comes back to my primary advice to companies. Like, one is awareness, two is controls. And if someone is ever asking you to not use the controls that are put in place, and to do something that is outside of those controls, that should make you pause and consider not doing it. Right? I think layered on top of that, sort of simple example of control, I would also say anything where people are asking for a tremendous amount of urgency, hey, you got to do it right now. That's a red flag. In terms of the historical red flags that came with deep fakes on, looking at the eyes, or making them do math, or making them do other stuff, I'm very hesitant to provide that guidance, because every time historically in the company's history that I'd said, well, this is the trend, that's the trend, and you can say this and it falls for that. The models fix that in the next release. So So I think you want to be careful to count on those sort of things. The other basic thing outside of controls and awareness is among your family, loved ones, or something like that. Have a code word. Have something that everyone kind of understands as the end code word that you should utilize.
Okay, so as we look at not trying to create some sort of recipe, and as we see, for example, the code words, as you had said, as a defense, code words can also work for business. I have recommended that CEOs and CFOs have a code word such that when the typical financial scam shows up saying, hey, we're doing this super secret deal and you get to transfer money here and there, they can go back with a challenge and response. And what I tell people is you can't reuse the same challenge and response. Once it's burned, it's burned. You have to keep going and things such as that. And so that doesn't scale well because unless you have people walking around with a couple little tokens where they say, authenticate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they say I authenticate 6, 7, 8, 9. That's kind of extreme. But when you're moving millions of dollars, I'll tell you what, I would mandate that as a CEO, saying you're carrying around with these little guys, and we're going to synchronize them because you put the same seed in there, or something like that. But are there any cases that you're familiar with where successful incidents have ended up being pretty serious for the organization as a result of social engineering and perhaps even AI powered?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's many incidents, and now over half of the CISOs I talk to have seen a deepfake type of attack at their company. And the thing overall with cybersecurity incidents is that most people do not publicize them. They keep it very quiet. But there was one that got publicity in the last year. It was a $25 million wire that a person was scammed into sending because they actually joined a Zoom meeting, and on the Zoom meeting were a bunch of their peers. So you heard about this one.
Yeah. But not everybody in our audience has, so please continue.
Yeah, so they joined a Zoom call where, it was obviously them and a whole bunch of their peers, and they got on the call and they explained why there was a, urgent deal that they were doing and walked through it and all this material, and then said, "Okay, and this is the amount we need to wire, and this is to whom," and all that sort of stuff. And the person went out and wired it, and then, realized later when talking to people and was talking about what they had done, and the person said, "What are you talking about?" But I have no idea what you're talking about. Realized that they had been the victim of a true deep fake scam.
Yeah, so that just wasn't one person masquerading. They created a whole room full of ghosts, AI empowered ghosts that stayed in role. And that can get worse and worse as we go forward because the capabilities, as we say, are getting better on a very rapidly increasing basis. We don't know when the next real capability is. Oh, look for 6 fingers on a hand. Well, that's been fixed. Look for the eyes. That's been fixed. Look for, okay, it keeps getting fixed. We get better and better. So why is detection of these things not a good strategy to say, oh, we'll just spot all the deep fakes if we use our AI to spot AI? What's the failure in that thought?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a couple different reasons why I think detection is challenging. One is that it's always hard to stay one step ahead of the models, right? I think it's always going to be an arms race, and assuming that the models and the attackers get smarter the same way that the detectors get smarter. It's very hard, I think, to structure it deterministically. Then it's at the end of the day, I think it's going to be an arms race, and there's going to be a significant percentage that still go to the bad guys. But number 2, I think is even more important, which is that guess what? The communication is probably not going to happen on a system that's been verified by your organization, right? So, hey, we secured our Zoom because we set up something for deepfake detection. Okay, great, but the person got invited to a last minute Teams meeting with some key partner, and that's what they joined, right? And that's where the fraud is perpetuated. Or oh, they called them on their phone, they sent them a text message. There was famously an impersonation of Marco Rubio where they were sending signal messages with, I believe, voicemails impersonating Rubio to foreign officials, pretending to be the United States and getting some of them, I think, to buy into it. So the ability to move off of whatever might be what you think is a secure channel and communicate to other channels. And look, the bottom line is that yes, you can to some degree mandate these things and it will filter out some of the issue. But it's still going to lead to a significant amount of folks getting in. And our job is to filter that down as much as possible, A, and then B, lessen the blast radius when it inevitably occurs.
That's a good insight. Now, some people out there might say, well, just improve your security awareness training. If we did effective security awareness training and we played this deep fake and we showed them that video and we read that newspaper article to them and then we poked them a few times with our own social engineering test, we should be fine. What's wrong with that strategy?
Well, look, I think that strategy of running security awareness is great to filter out, large amounts of the attack surface area. But I think the best strategy is to pair, really personalized security training that also comes with personalized AI powered simulated attacks. And, simulated attacks help understand, where the weak points are, what they might actually look like in real life. And then, the trainings themselves can be specific to that individual user. So I do think that, security awareness can be a big part of the puzzle. It's not the entire puzzle, but it could be a big part.
Interesting. So, really, what you're looking for is that when we do the testing, often, okay, there's going to be a test this month, this week, or whatever. It's almost like knowing there's a fire drill in school. Well, it's kind of helpful in a way because the building's not on fire, but also you anticipate that. So it's not a true test of catch you unawares. Also, if we think about it, the real attackers often try to create some sort of sense of urgency. That's often a common element in it. And if we fail to do that in our own little fish to say, oh, you've won $10 million in the Irish sweepstakes, you go, oh, I'm the luckiest person alive. Never been to Ireland and I won the sweepstakes. Probably not. But people make mistakes. They make more mistakes when they're under stress, when they're hurried, when they're rushed. Do you find that in terms of helping people deal with things that get through, what advice do you give them? Stop, count to 10. I used to say, if an email gets you emotionally going, that's not what email's for. Stop, time out. Email is store and forward. If it were really that urgent, someone would be picking up the phone. So what are your thoughts on stuff like that?
Well, first off, I think we should definitely do the rest of the podcast with you doing that accent because that would be.
I'm sure anybody out there from Ireland says he called that an Irish accent. Oh, you got to be kidding me.
Well, I thought it was fantastic. So feel free to throw it in, at the end or as a close off, whatever you like.
Thank you.
But yeah, look, it really blew my mind. I'm so distracted by it. I'm getting back to your point. But yeah, look, I think the traditional training today, it's super boring, right? It's too long. People just check the checkbox. They hit the next button as quick as they possibly can, and they don't learn anything from it.
Mhm.
I think that effective training now, it has to be personal. It has to be rendered specific to the company. So it has to be really customized to the organization. And, it's going to have moments of it that are wow, that are showing people what modern threats look like. And, at Adaptive, what we do is we actually integrate real world deep fakes, interactive voice simulations, video simulations, all those sorts of things inside of the training so that you can actually have those experiences specific to your organization in the training. And we pair that with custom rendered deepfake videos, of your executives, other people in the training that really make the person sort of sit up straight and go, wow, I'm actually going to pay attention to this because, at the end of the day, we all want to watch stuff that's about us. We want to watch stuff that's relevant for us. We don't want you to just waste your time telling me something that has nothing to do with me. We all live in our own little TV show. So, we try to make that show about you.
So our traditional measurement for cybersecurity awareness training has been completion rate. For example, 88 out of 100 people completed it, and of the 88, only 3 clicked through. What's a better way to measure progress with respect to tracking the change? Because ultimately, the purpose of the security awareness is to change behavior.
That's right. Yeah, look, you want to bring down the failure rate for new AI powered attacks, right? Our goal is to bring down that rate of simulated AI powered attacks significantly. Number two, we also do want to see people learning from the training. It's not just completion rates, it's also how they're doing on tests regarding those trainings, how they do in simulations inside of those trainings, and also their own rating. What did they think of our training? Because at the end of it, we want to hear their feedback too, so that we can adjust the training and make it even better, for them. So those are some of the big things that we ultimately want to see as a response, from the people that are actually learning from this stuff, taking it and hopefully bringing down the amount of attacks that a company deals with.
Interesting. So as we try to create a list of things you should know or things that you should pass on or maybe things that build into your training programs, what are some of those practical words of advice that you might have?
Yeah, look, number one, as I mentioned earlier, urgency is a big issue. So if you feel like someone is pushing you to make a decision now, give you some sort of information right now, that should set off alarm bells. That should be a big red flag for you. That you need to stop and potentially not do anything while you verify it. Right. So that's number one. Number two is on that verification piece, make sure that you're stepping back and saying, okay, is this a legitimate person? Are they coming from a real angle? We can that that indeed is a trustworthy source. And then number 3 is double checking to make sure that everything is normal, especially with the leadership team, right? So even if everything else seems to pass muster, the urgency makes sense. You verified the identity of the individual. Don't be afraid to go talk to the leadership team. I think another huge red flag is when someone tells you to keep it secret. I heard one recently where it was the CFO of a company was, sitting at their desk and they got an alert. Oh, that was $1 million wire that just got sent out by the controller to some random person. And he's like, well, what the heck is going on here? And he goes and he finds the controller and he says, what's happening? And the controller goes, oh, I can't talk to you about that. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm your boss. What do you mean you can't talk to you about it? And he says, well, no, I can only talk to the CEO about this. And it's like, you should just tell me what it is. He's like, no, I can only talk to the CEO. And he's like, okay. And he calls the CEO and says, I've got the controller here. They say he can only talk to you. And they got on the phone and realized that the CEO had been deep faked to the controller. And the controller had said, hey, you've got to wire money for some sort of transaction we're doing. And you can't tell the CFO because when we do this transaction, he's going to get fired. So, those type of things, I think you need to make sure that you're going up the flagpole. And, in that instance, they were only just lucky enough that the CFO got an alert about the wire transfer, and they were able to step in before it actually went out the door.
Yeah, and that's not all that different from just a regular attack. It's just that AI makes it more believable. And as you said, in this case, you could go ahead and deepfake somebody. Back in the day, I knew somebody who almost, I say almost because of the stroke of luck, almost sent about $900,000 overseas. And it came down to getting a phone call because the attacker had gotten into the mailbox, lifted some signatures from other documents, filled out all the right forms, and in the first case, got a call from the money manager saying, hey, you know that I don't do this. Why did you ask me to move money? He says, well, I didn't ask you. He said, you just sent me an email. And sitting in the email outbox or the sent folder was not only that, but one to the bank downstairs to do a wire transfer. And it had lifted the correct signatures off of another document, put it on the bank's document. So put a little bit of work into it. Ran downstairs and it's like, stop the presses because they were getting ready to key that thing out. And this is all within the first couple months of a new hire's experience there, just a stroke of luck. And so still working there, by the way, that person, but a little bit more sober awareness of what's out.
No, it's happening. It's constant, and I think to stop it, you do have to ensure that you're really, you're asking the relevant people, you're being open, and you're waiting. You're taking your time to respond to these things, that you're putting controls in place so that it really does sort of stop these unfortunate incidents. Which with AI now, in the example I used, they were able to make a deep fake that's really good of the CEO. They were able to have open source intelligence where the deepfake could talk about who the other employees were at the company.
The process that we go through, the way that we look at our business process, how do we test and then inoculate them against some of these AI deepfakes? Is there a mechanism for it? Is that a service out there to say, hey, give us your playbook and we'll run it through and we'll see if we can't find holes in it? What's the best way to fix that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we do is that we run tests where we pull all the open source intelligence that we can get, that we can find on an organization. We put it in the model. We figure out, based on that information, how an attacker would attack you. And then we show you what those attacks look like. So, here's all the information that's out there about CISO tradecraft. And then here's what the AI suggests attacking you based on that data.
So you're really doing more than just security awareness. You're actually, if you will, analyzing business process, comparing that against capabilities for AI enabled tools to take advantage of that, and really trying to spot the problems before the bad guys spot the problem, so to speak.
Yeah, look, I think risk analysis is a huge part of it, right? You need to understand where the risk lies for highly credentialed people and then also for, really everyone at the organization. And then you need to plot out your training and your simulated attacks based on that data.
Got it. So some of the things I think you guys offer are phishing simulations. And do you use your AI and OSINT for that, much like we are talking about the bad guys are doing it?
We do, yeah. We simulate those attacks. We do it with real time voice deepfake phone calls powered by OSINT. We also will do it over email powered by OSINT, and it just makes it a very personalized and realistic phishing scenario, which is very different than I think the prior approach to phishing, which was kind of one size fits all.
Right. You'd also mentioned about risk and managing risk and things like that. How do we go ahead organizationally and address those things to try to, for example, executives who often control the checkbooks or can tell someone who has access to the checkbook to do something? Do we see risks at different level in different organizations? And if so, how do we address those separately to make sure that people get a custom training that makes sense to them and not just a one size fits all?
Well, right. I mean, one of the ironies of this is that the folks that are the most at risk, these executives, sometimes highly credentialed people, are also busiest and unwilling to take the trainings or the other materials, right? They don't want to do it. So I think there lies a lot of the opportunity. And when you're able to show the executive, hey, here's your risk, here's why we think your risk is this, here's what the attacks may look like, then you can get their attention. Now when you mentioned here's how they might use your family members, the information about your family to attack you, the person will certainly pay attention and watch that 5-minute training.
And I guess one other thing in terms of practicality, if somebody gets a message and they suspect that somehow it's made it through the filters, uh, but they're still not quite sure, what should they do about that? Do you guys have something that allows them to pass that on to somebody who could give them an over the shoulder review, or are they pretty much on their own?
Yeah, so if someone is suspicious of an email and thinks that it might be a phishing attack, then there's a little button, an adaptive phish reporting button that can be installed in a Google or Microsoft instance. And all the person needs to do is just tap it to report that email as suspicious. What happens is, number one, if they report a message and that message is actually a simulation, then we say, great job. They get immediate feedback. Good job. You reported a simulation. It's not actually an attack, but way to go. And they can get points and show up on a leaderboard and even get rewards for that. Right. But if it actually is a potentially malicious attack, we have artificial intelligence that scans the material in real time and runs it through a number of different tests in order to figure out if it's safe, spam, or malicious. And then if we classify it as spam, we move it to the spam box. If we classify it as malicious, then we automatically move it to trash. And we remove any other emails that are similar to that email and also move it to either spam or trash accordingly.
Got it. I was talking to somebody this past week. I was out on the West Coast, and it was a meeting of CISOs, and he said, "My prediction is in 5 years there'll be no more email." I was like, "Okay, can you elaborate, please?" Because I think a lot of us kind of live off of that. He said, "Yep, everything will be Teams, everything will be Slack, everything will be something like that." Well, I think a lot of our defenses have been oriented around, well, email is a primary vector. Do you view it that way, or do you also help protect people who are already in their Teams and their Slack and their own little world? Whether or not this guy's right or not, we'll find out in 5 years. But in the meantime,
I mean, you need to be able to protect wherever work happens. We have integrations also with Slack and Teams, and in order to be there as well. But ultimately, I do think email will continue to be at the center of work for many years to come. I remember many years ago, I worked in the email field in particular back in 2010, 2009 to 2010. And at that time, everyone, the big talk was how, email will be gone in 5 or 10 years. And I think, that's obviously not true. I think email's, in a very, very big place for most work environments. Now, that may be different in, say, the technology industry, right? I think in the technology industry, you might see email being used less, but we don't really have a solution yet for external communication outside of email, right? How do you talk to people that aren't in your own organization? It's still primarily email and maybe a phone call, but obviously, email is more modern than the phone. So I would respond to that person and say, well, what do you think will happen with external communications in that world?
And that's exactly what I asked him because it was, I think, it was 25 years ago that I gave a talk at InfoSec World called PK I Don't Think So. And this is just before the dot-com crash. I guess it was 26 years ago. And I pointed out that all this hype about these public key infrastructures, technically they work, but practically they don't, because it's fine inside a company. It's fine inside Department of Defense. When I was there, the Navy silo of excellence would not talk to the Army silo of excellence because we had better excellence than your excellence. And I had to go to the Army War College with an Army.mil address because my Navy.mil wouldn't work. Now, presumably they fixed that, but that's the gist of the whole thing, is that lacking a common certificate authority that everybody believes, you just can't do that type of trust out there. You're going to need email of some sort to be able to have something come in. And then that's where companies like yours kick in to say, okay, we're going to give you some validation as to the likelihood that this is legitimate.
Do you know the number one integration into Claude? It's email. It's Gmail. So I think that, I think Slack and Teams are in the top 10. I think Slack is like number 7 or 8 or something. But and certainly, work is happening across many different surface areas, but for external based communication, email is really the only one that has solved that at scale. There's a lot of garbage email we all get, and there needs to be better systems to manage and deal with that. And that's not just, malicious. It's a lot of gray mail.
Yeah, and then years ago, I had on my personal side gone over to Gmail. It had much better filtering, and I know that other systems still struggle, but I'm not going to drop names right now because nobody's perfect, and stuff works its way through the cracks from time to time.
Well, it is, but I also think false positive is a very tough thing, right?
And I've been struggling with that because I have a newsletter that keeps dumping into, and I keep saying this is not spam. This is trusted centered, and don't flag these again. And they keep dumping in there, which causes me to waste time because I almost expect now when I'm waiting, okay, there's my newsletter from such and such an entity, and it's probably waiting for me in spam. And well, sure enough, it is.
No, I know. It keeps happening and it's not great. That's one thing I think there's a lot of opportunity to fix. I think we haven't seen Google fix it yet, transparently, just because it's too expensive, right? It would be a tremendous amount of compute for Google to start doing this across all of their users, especially since the vast majority of Gmail users are free.
That's a very good point. But so let's do some closing thoughts out here as we get close to the end of the show. So if CISOs and other people watching or listening to the show say, yeah, you've hit a couple pain points. We have either experienced or had near close calls with regard to business email compromise that have resulted in some financial loss. We're certainly seeing more and more of the AI-powered deep fakes out there, and it's just a matter of time before it hits pretty much anybody. You have to be prepared for it. So what actions can people do today to start preparing for it? Then how would they engage with an organization like yours if they say, hey, we're going to take this seriously and talk to some professionals who have been working on this problem for a while?
Yeah. I mean, look, simple stuff. Make your organization aware of what's possible and test your organization to see where the weak points are. And that's what we do at Adaptive Security. You're going to have training that's built, adapted just for you, so that all the materials is built custom just for you. And then also includes AI-powered, different types of AI-powered simulated attacks over real-time voice deepfakes, and allows you to really see and experience what it's like for that user. And then number two, we run simulated attacks on their own. that can test where the vulnerabilities lie in your organization and help people learn before it's a real attack.
So adaptivesecurity.com, right?
AdaptiveSecurity.com.
All right, so that would be a place to look for more information. Brian, I want to thank you for your time and insight. Any last thoughts you have before we wrap up?
Look, I think that as much as we've seen a lot of growth here, most people are still figuring this stuff out. Most employees are not aware, but attackers are also not fully aware. But they are gonna be, and they're gonna be hearing from their, from their smart techie friend who on top of this stuff and is making crazy money and all that sort of thing, and they're gonna say, "Wow, I need to do that at my, illicit, organization as well," and we're gonna see a huge, huge increase in these attacks, so, we gotta get ready, and get ready ASAP for this stuff.
So buckle up, get ready for a ride, but also make sure you're protected effectively. So Brian Long, Adaptive Security, thank you very much for being part of CISO Tradecraft. For our listeners and watchers out there, thank you for being part of our audience. And if you found this episode helpful, give us a thumbs up or 5-star or whatever. Not that we're grade grubbing, but it helps other people find us so they could be helped out in their career journey as well. And as always, we'd love to hear back from you. You can go ahead and connect with us on LinkedIn. We also have a Substack newsletter that you can get that'll reflect a lot of the content that we have. So we hope this has been helpful for you, and we thank you for your attention and your time. And until next time, stay safe out there.